Welcome to the show where the real ones vent. Politics, culture, and the world event. From Athens to Paris, got a global view. Alex Salt's out, I'm bringing truth to you. From diplomacy talks to the Hollywood scene, breaking down the headlines and what's in between. No scripts, no spin, just the facts and entertainment. Tune in every week, this is how to tame it. Follow folks, infotainment, baby.
This is an interim sort of show simply because I saw the Fauci deposition and we've all lived through COVID, right? And some of us got vaccinated, some others did not get vaccinated. We are all in the same boat when it comes to this, whether you're a conservative or a liberal or a libertarian or whatever you might be, all right? The point is not to point fingers on whether people got vaccinated or unvaccinated. And I can tell you a short story about this. The point is how the government behaved against individuals that didn't. And individuals that did, for that factor. Before I started the deposition and my commentary on it, I want to tell you a small story. So I was living in Germany at that point in time, working in a company that, of course, did not let you work on it unless you were vaccinated. So they forced the vaccinations upon me. What's very tragic is that my mom came to visit me, and on the way out, because she was also vaccinated, the airline specifically, a very specific airline that does cheap flights, with a very cheap pricing, did not let her board the plane, not because she wasn't vaccinated, she had that document, just because they didn't feel that that document was correct. Now, luckily enough, she got into a panic attack, she cried, she couldn't board the plane, she had no idea what to do, nobody was communicating with her, she didn't speak German. She nearly had a heart attack. I remember the situation I found her in after, and she was completely wrecked. And what's funny enough is that eventually some Greek guy, so some also Greek police officer in Germany, actually escorted her out and helped her. So it wasn't the Germans that really helped, it was the Greeks that helped. Escorted her out, gave her a glass of water, and explained to her that the airline does this frequently if they just assess, for example, that maybe a document is fake, or if they just feel that it might be a potential threat. And this is to a 67-year-old woman at the time that had her vaccination. She had the documentations to publish it. And she nearly died because some stupid bitch in an airport decided that because of their criteria of the COVID vaccines, they will not go ahead and let her board. Now, when I reached out to Ryanair and filed a complaint, they told me that it was their prerogative based on the rights that they had with COVID. And when I filed a complaint against Ryanair outside of Ryanair, so with the relevant authorities, again, it was ruled that it was their prerogative to board and onboard anybody that they did not feel like it. This is one case in point, and what's tragic about it is that it reflects a whole society, right? So there were people that lost their businesses, people that lost their jobs, people who watched their relatives die from a distance because they couldn't do it. All that for what? For one man to hide the origin. Well, one system reflected by one man. So one Democrat-based system, one China-based system, one liberal-based system, one socialist-based system, to hide the origins of said virus and to cause such chaos and destruction upon the world for individuals. So they did this to all of us. They did this to humanity. And all of a sudden they pretended to care about us. No, they never cared about us, because if they cared about us, they wouldn't have behaved that way. Now, notably, out of all of this, one country emerged as way more democratic than what the West pretends to be. And that country was the United Arab Emirates, where they had a referendum and they made a decision and they treated it the way it should have been treated. Granted. But what does that say for us in the West? Anyway, I just wanted to share this small story before I deep dive into this, just so that we can have a little bit of a look at this deposition and understand with what mindset some people are looking at it. And we're looking at it with all this pain and suffering and agony and fuck knows what we've put in our bodies for a fake disease. All the while, some people like Fauci and Fauci's across the EU got rich.
Answers. The American people deserve to know why dangerous research was funded by NIAID in a totalitarian country.
So we're starting off with Senator Rand Paul asking the right questions. Why did we fund dangerous diseases in China?
Gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China, will likely go down in history as perhaps one of the worst public health decisions. Frankly, the American people deserve an apology. I hope today, Dr. Fauci, you will come clean, admit it was a mistake to fund dangerous research in China, admit that the risk of this dangerous research exceeded any possible benefits.
Look into his eyes. He has no remorse about what he's done. No remorse about the damage he has done.
Never happens again.
He's not looking down. He's not feeling sorry. Some might even argue he's feeling proud.
You argue that you did not personally issue every lockdown order, close every school, or impose every mandate. But officials across the country invoked your authority to justify these decisions.
He is right.
And you presented your recommendations not as judgments open to debate, but as dictates of science itself. Your own words demonstrate that
there
you
was
understood the
no freedom to choose. It was forced.
On March 14th, 2020,
it was forced.
That the task force recommendations were driven by me, yourself, Deb, and CDC. The next day you wrote that you had convinced Mayor Bill de Blasio to close the New York City schools, so you were involved. That same night, Governor Gavin Newsom's chief of staff told you that the governor had decided to close California schools, bars, and restaurants after watching you on television. Presidents, governors, mayors, school boards, corporations, and Congress all bear responsibility for the decisions they made. The COVID lockdown, however, could never have been inflicted without you aiding and abetting the crime. Children lost years of education. Small businesses built over a lifetime disappeared. Patients delayed cancer screenings and other medical care. Families were separated from dying relatives. Workers were ordered to accept a medical procedure or lose their jobs. Worship assembly, employment, education, and travel were restricted in the name of science. While you did not impose every restriction, you used your public authority to justify them. While you concluded publicly that COVID occurred naturally, your private record tells a different story. In early 2020, your hand-picked virologist warned that the virus appeared to have been manipulated in the lab. In a conference call concerning the origin of the virus, all but two of the participants believed deliberate insertion was possible. Your concern was not merely theoretical. That same week, you led an urgent effort to determine whether your own agency had funded the research related to these experiments that were now under suspicion. Hours later, your assistant reported that the Wuhan experiments had indeed been reviewed and approved by the NIH. Those were not the actions of officials who believed that a research-related origin was an absurd conspiracy theory. They were the actions of officials urgently trying to determine whether their agency funding was connected to the research under discussion, connected to the pandemic. You could not hide that your agency had funded the Wuhan research or your long history of defending gain-of-function research. The only alternative left was to argue that COVID-19 did not originate in the Wuhan lab. You were not a detached observer. You had an institutional interest in the public believing that federally funded research had nothing to do with the pandemic.
You guys understand what he's saying? He's saying that Fauci, his institution, funded COVID. They funded not just COVID, they're funding every dangerous pandemic. Every dangerous pandemic. And simply because they couldn't justify it to the public cause and they still wanted to make money out of it, So, the opportunity arose, let's make money out of it rather than accept the blame. Instead of accepting the blame and fixing a potential fuck up, what they decided to do was ruin people's lives. The only option they had left was not to say that the pandemic rose from a factory, but it started off from some dude in China eating a bat, and then that spread out worldwide. Do you understand the level of, I don't even know how to explain this, I'm going to say demonic possession, the level of corruption that there must have been between officials for them to not only create a pandemic, but to unleash it in the world and then deflect any form of blame for it.
For a 10-year period.
I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to smoke. I don't usually do this on podcasts, but this is an exception.
National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, as a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, or the White House COVID-19 response team, or as Chief Medical Advisor to the President. Have you refused this pardon, or do you have any reason to believe this full and unconditional pardon, this grant of immunity, would somehow require you to plead the Fifth Amendment?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Based on the facts presented, I'm going to direct you to answer the questions. The committee has issued a valid subpoena. They have requested your presence here. The questions are very pertinent to your decision-making as head of NIAID, as well as a chief advisor to the president. Do you still refuse to answer the question?
Guys, look, I'm not a man that's pro-violence, right? But considering what they've done, all right, there should not have been things like pardons or pleading the Fifth Amendment, all right? The Fifth in the U.S. and pardons were created for the wrongfully and the people that were put through trials and tribulations unjustly. Senator Ron Paul should not be begging Fauci to tell us the truth. Fauci's moral compass should be screaming at him that after everything he's done, he needs to come out clean. Conscience. This man has no conscience.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Let's do the, Dr. Fauci, were you ever made aware of gain-of-function research on monkeypox being conducted at the National Biodefense Analysis and Countermeasure Center and back at Fort Detrick?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Look at this. This is criminal. This is criminal.
Dr. Fauci, did the CIA ever
This
transfer
is
funds to NIH under an
the
interagency
only
agreement?
soul of response that requires some form of torture to get an answer out
On
of,
the
whether
advice
that be
of
waterboarding.
counsel, I respectfully decline
You know
to
what?
answer
I do believe
based
in
upon
drastic
my
measures when it
rights
comes to
under the
people like
Fifth
this.
Amendment of the Constitution.
Questions. Dr. Fauci, did the NIH ever conduct research for or in coordination with any element of the intelligence community, CIA, ODNI?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
The reason why these questions are important is, President Trump has done a ban, and we're glad that he did a ban on gain-of-function research. So we're better off than we were when we had an advocate serving as head of NIAID, an advocate for gain-of-function research. There is still the
So this is very important. Whether you love or hate the Republican cause, I personally was a Trump supporter and still am a Trump supporter. Though there are many aspects that need to be discussed about that. One of the great things he's done for humanity is that he's banned these dangerous researches, because it's abundantly clear that once research like this and illnesses like this that could have a deadly impact to the world come into the wrong hands, the outcomes may be another COVID or another hantavirus or chickenpox or any other form of common disease that is genetically modified to torture people. Now, I'm going to fast forward this a little bit because it's very interesting.
It was sent out. So we have evidence that, in fact, you were fully aware of it and certainly approved, if not authored it. So I was
Pause for a second and look at the arrogant face of Fauci. I'm not sure if you guys can see this, right? But Fauci, again, zero signs of remorse.
simply ask you, I mean, is that true? I mean, did you literally lie to your own diary? Did you know of that letter sent out to governors about reopening county by county? Again, Mr. Chairman, I'd
Guys, you can't see this, but you know, I'll bring it back a little bit and show it to you because it's amazing that he starts laughing.
On March 27,
Laughing.
2020, you wrote in your diary, "To my surprise yesterday, the POTUS sent a letter to governors outlining a plan to reopen county by county while monitoring the spread of virus in the low-risk counties. This was half-baked and never shown to Deb or I before it was sent out." So we have evidence that, in fact, you were fully aware of it and certainly approved, if not authored it. So I was just simply asking you, I mean, is that true? I mean, did you literally lie to your own diary? Did you know of that letter sent out to governors about reopening county by county? Again, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask you to ask the witness to just answer that one simple question.
Look at that. He's laughing, guys.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
This is exactly the kind of shit we need Guantanamo
Senator
for.
Addison.
Thank you. Dr. Fauci, I want to start by thanking you for more than 50 years of service to this country at the National Institutes of Health. And it is unfortunate that you have been put in the position that you are in today. And it must be enormously frustrating to know that this hearing is designed to entrap you. It must be very frustrating for your attorneys to hear the chair's mischaracterization of the legal issues and posture that impact your decisions.
Now
at the
you know
witness table
this
today.
senator is a Democrat.
Meanwhile, I was going to ask you a series of questions about things that are relevant right now to the people of the United States about the state of public health in this country. Since President Trump took office in 2025, more than 4,500 cases of measles have been reported. That is more cases in the year and a half since Donald Trump has been president than were reported from 2000 to 2024 combined. Children are dying because there has been increased vaccine hesitancy fueled by.
Obviously, there's been increased vaccine hesitancy. You weaponized vaccines during a pandemic and people lost their jobs, their own health. They saw their own people die for the sake of a manufactured disease in a lab in China that was funded by the government. And this is something the whole world knew. The EU knew, the US knew. This is not something that's prevalent only to the US. It's prevalent across the globe. And it's something that has to do with all of us globally. What is admirable is that the US is investigating it, and it is investigating it because of the work of the libertarians and the Republicans. And we need to take a minute and appreciate that. Now, for Senator Hassan, who sounds of Arabic origin, but let that be. I'm pretty sure she's a Democrat, but I'm also very, very disappointed in her weaponizing vaccine hesitation to make a case for measles. I don't know how she feels, but I'm pretty confident that around the globe, parents that have seen this and have understood what has happened during COVID would be hesitant to be injecting their kids with apparently weaponized weapons. Are vaccines bad? No, of course not. Nobody says they are. But are they good too? Well, again, when you see something being weaponized, it's the exact same concept as nuclear energy, for example. Is nuclear energy bad? No, it's fantastic. But can it lead to something else? Yes. Should nuclear energy be used? Yes. But we need proper checks and balances so one man shows do not gain so much power that they can weaponize nuclear or vaccines for their own personal wealth and their own personal gains. So, I mean, she needs some perspective, definitely. And it's quite saddening to see that she has decided to weaponize this instead of gaining some perspective.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and frankly, his entire administration. Thousands.
Now, Robert Kennedy Jr. is a great man. Whether you like it or not, there have been declassifications on cancer. He was the root cause of bringing this all to light. Robert Kennedy Jr. is fighting the good fight. And he's not looking at it from a party perspective. He's looking at it from an honest, hardworking, good-working man perspective. And these are very, very, very important things to take into consideration.
Of people in the United States of America have been sickened by a foodborne parasite, and the outbreak is nowhere near under control, as staffing at the FDA and other critical public health entities has been slashed by Russell Vought and Elon Musk. Last year, the National Institutes of Health awarded 201 fewer grants compared to the previous years. 207, I am corrected, compared to previous years. As those grants were either canceled or delays, especially at the beginning of the Trump administration, I can tell my colleagues what the impact was on people in New Hampshire, on scientists in New Hampshire, on clinical trials in New Hampshire, where people's cancer treatment was interrupted because Elon Musk and Russell Vought know better.
Well, you know what, Senator Hassan? People's cancer treatments were also interrupted or not put into place or ignored. And a lot of people ended up dying in hospital beds or outside hospital beds by themselves simply because you guys manufactured disease and then spread it to the whole world. So, should they cut the funding? Yes, the funding should be cut. The swamp needs to be drained. Checks and balances need to come back into place, and then we can start potentially refunding the disease prevention schemes. There needs to be checks and balances on a global scale, whether this is the US or the EU, where people, any people, do not decide to unleash havoc across the world in an unfathomable measures with unrestrained perspicacity for their own personal gains. Now, I don't want to be the numbers guy, and I don't want to count the numbers because it's an unfair measure to count the numbers. But if you're gonna count numbers and mention kids and cancer patients, then you also gotta look at kids and cancer patients during the COVID vaccines. You ruined lives. The impact you have had on society for those 2-3 years has been unimaginable. And the impact this has had to kids and cancer patients and cancer families is incomprehensible. And those thousands, if not millions, compared to a few today, cannot be counted against.
They say, than the people at NIH about what to fund. And because they did some sort of word search, it seems, for some of the grants, and boy, oh boy, if you were studying rural health in New Hampshire and trying to understand how to better engage people who need health care in rural America, that was off the table. America is losing researchers and scientists to other countries because researchers and scientists, highly trained, highly qualified,
David Award, you've got the Partnership for Public Service, you've got the Adel.
I want to focus on this a little bit, but we'll do it on a separate stream. A separate stream for this, but also I wanted to focus on a very significant part of this interview. Obviously, we're not going to do the full 3 hours, but I like the line of questionings of this specific senator. I'm not sure who he is, but we will see shortly. And what he said, as well as the responses, because it put a very clear perspective into who Fauci is and what he has done.
Prize. You've got the Smithsonian Award. You've got the National Academy of Medicine's Award. You've got the CDC Foundation. In fact, you turned your staff into a full-time application machine. You actually wrote to people and said, do you think maybe I'd qualify? And you got cash for all of this. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 employees, was it? In fact, you used 8 separate federal employees on federal time using federal resources to solicit cash awards. Isn't that true?
Nice. What this man is saying, and it is factually true, and I'm going to let you see Fauci's face as well, is that he weaponized his brand name to boost his ego. So it wasn't enough that this man killed millions. He also solicited federal employees to make sure that he gets awarded both financially and with titles for his crimes.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Here they are right over my shoulder. Here's all of them. The people that you use, federal employees, so that you could go and get cash money. And the most hilarious part is that you weren't content to even dragoon them into applying for all of these cash awards. You then had them go out to the ethics agencies and ethics watchdogs and demand that you be able to get the money. That's right. We've got it in your emails. Your staff and employees on federal time, using federal resources, being paid with federal dollars, are soliciting cash for you, and then they're turning around and saying to the agency, we don't want just an answer, we want to get to yes, because Fauci wants the money.
This senator is a freaking hero, all right? And this is what America represents. This exact point is what America represents. This is the freedom and the freedom of information that people should have to make an informed decision on what Fauci was and what he did.
He wants it. We want to get to yes, and yes takes time. This is your chief of staff again, using federal email to pressure the agency's own ethics people so that you could get money, so that you could get rich. And it violated the law. Didn't it, Dr. Fauci? Didn't it? It violated the law, didn't it? It is a question. You can answer. Go ahead.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Federal law, as you very well know, prohibits the solicitation of cash awards or other personal benefits for federal employees. And it certainly prohibits using your own employees to do this.
This man is a hero.
CFR section 2635-205B. It says it right there in black and white. You cannot use federal resources, federal dollars, federal employees, federal offices, federal email, federal time to solicit cash awards, and you did all of it, and the worst part is thousands of people were dying while you were doing it. You were supposed to be the nation's doctor, and you were playing one on TV, but this is what you were doing with your time. Isn't that true?
Again, he has no remorse on what he's done, and it's apparently very visible.
I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, I can see why. I can certainly see why. You know what I can't quite figure out is that why you were so obsessed with it, because you're already rich. I mean, and your scheme worked here. I mean, your net worth now is north of $12 million. You got over $1 million in cash awards during COVID, during a 12-month, 24-month span during COVID. $1 million you knocked down in cash money using federal resources. Now you're worth more than $12 million. You've got a pension that in its first year paid out north of $400,000 a year. 1 million people dead, you're getting rich. 1 million people dead, you're using federal employees to get cash awards for you. 1 million people dead.
Guys, look at his eyes. No remorse. No remorse on what he's done. Absolutely no remorse on what he's done. This is a crime. This is a crime against humanity. This shouldn't be trialed just in the US. This should have an international tribunal the size of what happened with the Nazi tribunals, so Nuremberg, for example, and everybody on a global scale across the EU and the US needs to be put on trial. And it needs independent judges and independent prosecutors.
And you're here taking the fifth because you don't want to admit that what really happened in all that time was a multi-month, multi-year course of self-dealing. Isn't that true, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, well, silence is admission. And here's the real thing. At the end of the day, it wasn't just about the money, really, was it? It was really about a power trip. I mean, through all of this, you want to be the most famous scientist in the world. You were so focused on getting every award and every drop of cash that you could, all because you wanted to be on TV. You wanted to be the sun god of science. You wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it all. You wanted to lambaste Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. You wanted to be the guy. You had time to sit for InStyle magazine. Here's what you were doing with your time. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards.
I don't know who this man is over here. I haven't been able to see his name, but to me, and I'm not even American, to me, he's a national hero. He's an international hero because he's representing the US people, like he's representing Americans, but he's voicing something that took place on a global scale. So this man is a hero.
But now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time, I don't know. But what I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you go home and write that in your diary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I got goosebumps, guys. This is a multiple mic drop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Fauci, I'm not here to perhaps attack you or defend or anything. It's really just more, honestly, I just want to acknowledge I have had members of my family die from COVID, and now I also grieve for people that I've met that have lost their business through the pandemic, and they'll never been the same. Now, as during the pandemic, I was the lieutenant governor, so we were in the middle of all of that maelstrom, trying to find the right balance between protect life and protect the economics and for all of it. And I'm not sure if we got it all right or wrong.
You got it all wrong.
Without a doubt, I can continue to question myself. But one that it's not about much more your regrets, but I have one. And that is early on that there was the theory that the virus could have emerged from the lab. And early on that became like a right-wing kinds of theory. And I thought it seemed to make sense. Now there was a really advanced lab that was close by, and then you have this unknown virus out. So, but that became a very partisan thing. And now it seems now it's more and more emerging theory that would have come from the lab. Now, I think that the next time our nation's facing something like this, we are not become, as I might have been, blinded by the partisan idea that maybe the truth might come from a side that's different than you are. But I think we should really be willing to pursue truth, no matter where that may have emerged, after for all of that. So, and I now cede the remain back to the chair. Thank you.
Senator
So
Moreno.
basically, he said nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will echo Senator
I think
John-
this is the truck driver that was walking around with shorts, right? The governor that was elected. Again, I'm not too sure about U.S. politics to that extent, but this to me is completely unacceptable. This was a pointless statement in a pointless hearing. But I want to skip it back and I want to take a minute. There we go. So Senator Josh Hawley. This man alone, along with Senator Rand Paul, are national heroes, are international heroes, and they need to be awarded for their service right now because them to themselves brought the truth out for us to see. And okay, the rest of it is just standard deposition. Let's go ahead and listen a little bit to Dr. Paul.
In private, he wrote that looks like the wet market was a super spreader event. It didn't originate there. We know that some of the earliest deaths and sickness came from somewhere else. But then for years and years, we got dishonesty. So let's play the video so we can see a little juxtaposition of the problem we're dealing with.
So Fauci knew the truth. It's abundantly clear he knew the truth.
Wet markets, so you have animals that come out of the wild that are sold at these open, what they call them wet markets, where you bring animals in from the wild.
We've recovered. It also should be acknowledged. What's the number one thing we can do if we get another pandemic? Before we have a vaccine, before we have monoclonal antibodies, it would be to utilize natural immunity. So instead of the advice you were giving to Cuomo and others in New York that led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands of people, you.
And guys, this is a chained event. Like the way Cuomo handled New York led to Mamdani being elected. There's a lot of negatives that came from this, and the world has still not been able to recover from the mental aspect of what they caused. And that is the most significant part of it because it plays well with the rule books that these elites have set up. And Fauci did this for 12 million, which is in the grand scale of who's playing this chess game, nothing.
You could have been saying, well, maybe the nurses taking care of the elderly should be people who are 2 weeks out from COVID infection. We could have used natural immunity as somewhat of a block of protection. Imperfect, but the only protection we had and the only thing we could have done. Instead, the nursing homes were seated with people who had COVID. So I think the discussion of natural immunity is one where there wasn't sufficient.
Guys, yes, and this is the U.S. impact again. I want you to sort of understand, for those of you that are watching from the U.S., what this did to Europe. In countries like Italy and Greece, they literally had them in hospital beds, not in specific chambers or anything, but they had them dying like left and right, with the rest of their family not being able to see them. It was absolutely horrendous. Like the crimes committed, and I keep on saying this over and over, have been extensive. The psychological crimes the psychological issues they have caused. I mean, it's unfathomable. There are no words to describe this.
Sufficient honesty, humility. There wasn't enough presentation to encourage people. That was the only encouraging thing we had for a while is you've got it. You're very, very, if not impossible, close to impossible chance that you'll die if you get it again. Everybody could have been reassured. Nobody was reassured. It's like, well, we don't know. We just don't quite understand natural immunity. My favorite quote from that is from Martin Kulldorff from Harvard. You called him one of the people that you had to take down, the fringe epidemiologist, which I've never ever heard a scientist call another scientist that. But he jokingly said on Twitter, he said, yeah, we knew about natural immunity from 486 BC, from the time of the Athenian plague. We lost all knowledge of it in 2020. The good news is it's slowly coming back. 24 to 2025, we're beginning to understand what natural immunity is again. Not something perfect, but a useful tool that could have been used, but also something that could have helped people by telling the public, my goodness, you're not going to die now. You have a chance. If you've already had it and you're 85 years old and you're at risk for it, and you're wanting to feed your wife, and they're telling you to wear 4 masks and not be around your wife when you've already had it, it made no sense. I visited with a man whose mom was 83 and she was dying from COVID. They go to the
Look, guys, and this is what I'm going to say to wrap this up. All right. And I understand the potential implications in terms of defamation, but I also invoke my right as a citizen, my birthright as a citizen in the West to express myself, especially against oppressive measures that were taken against me and my surroundings, right? So Fauci is a piece of shit. I believe what Senator Josh said. So Josh was a man that he lost himself somewhere along the way. He cared only about his bank account. He cared about his international fame. He wanted to do this whole thing probably of creating a pretty big brand name so that when he retires, he can then go ahead and do some freelancing, consulting, healthcare specialist, king of the world kind of thing. I come from the expert network industry, so I know exactly how this works and how brand naming works and impacts the work you do on a global scale. That it was probably his sort of idea, but that came at a cost of millions of lives. And anybody that does this, and you see this very, very often in the corporate world and political world, you see this everywhere, where people just sacrifice other people for their own personal gain. And I'm against it being done to one person, and I have fought for one person in the same way that I would fight for millions and millions. So this is completely unacceptable to me. This man needs to be put to jail. We need to have international tribunals, international courts that look at everyone responsible across the world, and more specifically the Western world, and start punishing people, because there's a lot of cases in the EU that we need to discuss. There's some redacted files about how the EU Parliament took money to be able to push vaccines, and we don't have all the information on it. And we need the information. We deserve the information. I'm not saying that humanity will respond. It's abundantly clear that, for example, in the cases of Epstein, humanity did not respond. And in this particular case, I don't think there's going to be a sort of global revolution or a global response rate, but these people need to be held accountable regardless of how the citizenry reacts. The citizenry may not react no matter what. But if we want to value things like the rule of law, justice, these divine concepts that came from God and religion all the way to our day-to-day life, if we need to value those and respect those and reciprocate those and build a society where those are respected, then these people need to be punished. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this.